2 programs ago, I said that we would have the first movement of Paderewski playing that famous movement, and yesterday we had 3 complete performances, and I entirely forgot about the Paderewski, but several listeners informed me that I forgot, so it's now back in my memory, and I have the performance here in Paderewski. I don't remember the performance, so I'll be listening now to see if I enjoy it. Here he is. the first movement of the sonata in C-sharp minor, the so-called Moonlight, in the magic that was Paderewski. And he had something,
I was going to say, wow, there's something there.
He has terribly bad habits pianistically, and he doesn't at all hit the hands together. The bass note is coming before the right hand, and it was a mannerism of the late 19th century performers, but he took it to, high degrees, and I don't know if he was always conscious of it. Paderewski had such an amazing career.
Wasn't he a politician or something?
Yes, let's not use the word politician, although it originated as a fine word, politics, as an art, but Paderewski became the symbol of Poland, and he was like, he became a politician out of necessity because, well, let's look at his career, because it's truly interesting. I think he's born around 1860. Yes, in fact, 1860. Now, he's more interested in composing, but at the age of 24, he decides he's going to be a great pianist. He goes to Vienna, studies with Leschetizky. Leschetizky says, there's no way you'll be a pianist at this age. You should have had much more technique, things like that.
In other words, he had never played the piano before?
Yes, he played the piano, and probably well, but he was more of a composer, and had already composed many works, and perhaps his musical training wasn't as good as it should have been.
The Polish Fantasy comes to mind, in fact, that strange piano concerto.
Piano concerto is very early work, and many things. Anyway, Paderewski is a good composer. He's more than the Minuet in G, which is his world-famous piece. So Paderewski, within 5 years, makes a debut, and it's a sensation. There has not been heard anything like this, at least for the audience. Professionals never went crazy about Paderewski, but the magic to the public was extraordinary. Paris went mad, London went mad, and soon, I believe it was Steinway, brought him to America. Well, America went mad, calling him Paderewski, but he became the symbol of the classical musician, and he was a tremendous showman. He had this long silky hair. He had been dramatized by the artist Burne-Jones in England in a famous drawing. He was lionized everywhere. He had great manners. He was socially wonderful, and everyone loved Paderewski. And he was a noble soul, very noble, kind, but he had a wonderful streak of the grand manner and knew how to project it. He'd be out there on stage with only a light on a darkened stage, projecting a flood on his very beautiful face with this long hair, light brown or blondish hair. Yeah.
Did he fill a need at that time? In other words,
absolutely, another showbiz need, and America also needed a classical musician to that would symbolize a certain romantic energy. We were so staid in around 1890. The music of our time was very academic. People like Gottschalk were out of fashion. The New England school of composing with Payne, Horatio Parker, literally a stranglehold on musical composition. So Paderewski had all the qualities, being Polish, and it became very fashionable to be Polish at that time because he was a world personality. So he made a fortune in America, and he started in New York, and he had his own railroad car, and he traveled with an entourage of masseurs, chiropractors, chefs, secretaries. He'd come into small towns in Missouri. There'd be brass bands. Mayors would give speeches. Here is this greatest of all living artists. Without a doubt, this is the third most eminent keyboardist that ever lived. Liszt, Anton Rubinstein, and then Paderewski. Well, he made something like $7 million in America in
the old days.
Think of that. Yeah.
The equivalent of, what, 70 million now, at least.
And he lived in a sumptuous and grand way. So, yes, he had that need. There was that need for him, and he was an aspect of showbiz, as all performers are in one way or another, even when they don't like it.
The question, of course, is does the situation make the man, or does the man make the situation? Was he a great pianist?
Well, you see,
or can
by
we even know?
1900, he was already beginning to be out of shape, playing too much all over the world. He became sloppy. These mannerisms just discussed became sometimes ridiculous. And then 1902, 3, 4, 6, 8, he's still playing, and he's not practicing, although he worked very hard when he could during the summers in Switzerland at his villa. So what happens is he's always a fervent Polish patriot. Now, we all know of the tragic history of that repressed nation. By 1914, he comes to America and starts one of the most fantastic publicity campaigns certainly a musician ever put on, and that was to raise tons of money for the Polish cause during the war. Remember, America's not in the war. Okay, he goes a step further. He starts the organization of 20,000 volunteer American Poles who are trained in Canada. President Wilson is a great admirer of Paderewski. Paderewski has another gift. He is a golden orator. So in the cause of the Polish effort for freedom, he is a great stimulus. By 1915-16, those troops are ready to go.
He had his own army.
His own army, yes. So they go there, they do a good job and so forth. He's not admired only by Wilson. Clemenceau, Lloyd George, he is an unbelievable diplomat. Now, naturally, the piano playing is suffering, but people are coming all over to spend money to hear Paderewski. And by the end of the war, of course, America joins the war, and it's over with, and there's no one else in Poland, so to speak, with such a symbolic force that Paderewski had. So he is asked to sign the treaty at Versailles, right? Okay, he does that. And then he enters Poland triumphantly, and in 1918, in December of that year, he is elected by the Polish people, premier. Well, he's not comfortable in this role, but he does very many good diplomatic acts in the first year. However, there's an assassination attempt, and he was really not into that bit, of being assassinated. And he decided, well, I want to get back to my piano playing and composing. Now, during this period, from 1900, where the piano playing, remember this is 1976, and everyone, Paderewski's nothing. Well, read George Bernard Shaw's review of Paderewski in London in 1893 or so. I mean, he had to have a great deal. So he's composing his large symphony in B minor, which is as large as a Mahler symphony. His opera Monroe is performed at the Metropolitan Opera. He has a wonderful piano sonata of 1901 in E-flat minor, large scale. Rubinstein gave the world premiere way back in the early 1900s. So he gets out of politics and he goes to California in the 1920s, and he lives there and he practices again. And the magic is there still.
Did he make movies?
He made movies, one called The Moonlight Sonata.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay, so he's now, born in 1860. It's in the 20s. In the 30s, he's still playing. He's still around. He's not president of Poland anymore. What happens? Of course, 1939, Paderewski again called to arms. Poland invaded, and I think it's 1941 where he gives a concert for the war effort, the Polish cause, in Madison Square Garden. 20,000 people come to hear him play an enormously difficult program, including the Brahms Paganini variations.
And he must have been, this was in 39, so he was, almost 70 years of age?
No, more than that, 1860 to 1940. That's 80 years.
Yeah, 80.
So he dies in 1941, and his heart is in
Oh, this is where that
Right.
story came from.
In Brooklyn, it was
It's still in Brooklyn, you said?
yes, waiting for the Poland to be free.
His body was taken back, but his heart was left here? Is that the way it went?
No, now his body was buried by order of President Roosevelt at Arlington National Cemetery. So Paderewski's resting place is among the American honored dead.
But the organ, the heart, is
Yeah.
kept in Brooklyn in a jar or whatever.
Yes, right. So what a career. And
You want to hear that again?
let's hear him again,
I
yes.
think that would be only appropriate.
And that's Jan Paderewski in the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata, the Moonlight Movement. And we'll return with an exploration of Beethoven's next piano sonata, the Pastoral, right after this message. This is WNCN New York. 1801 produced 4 piano sonatas, the Opus 26 with the Funeral March, and the 2 fantasy sonatas, including the Moonlight, and now the Pastoral, another sonata with a name given by a publisher not sanctioned by Beethoven, a 4-movement work of large proportion. Perhaps the title Pastoral is not a bad one, really. It opens with 3 wonderful Ds in the bass, and then the piece moves, and let's begin with Walter Gieseking.
28, the so-called Pastoral, in a very nice performance. I love this work, the gentle quality of this movement. The whole sonata is very gentle. Quite different from the stormy finale of The Moonlight. Another performance, Maria Grinberg. Maria Grinberg. What's your smile about?
I don't know, we were talking. We shouldn't really talk while the record is playing, but we were. And your last statement to me was to go ahead and say it on the air. I said she must really be a beautiful person to play like that, no matter what she looks like physically. You know, just it just pours out of her, just beautiful. Her idea of Beethoven.
Absolutely agree with you. I just love her playing. I'm glad that we have these 32 sonatas by her. Maria Grinberg, born in Odessa. This sonata is so beautiful. Do we have any more time?
We have time for one more, and I've got one ready.
Wonderful. And it's Daniel Barenboim. Daniel Barenboim in the first movement marked Allegro, played quite slowly. Of the Opus 28, the so-called Pastoral Sonata, on the next program we'll hear other movements of this four-movement work. The Andante, which is the next movement, was one of Beethoven's favorite pieces, often playing it separately himself. Thank you for listening.